All right, so I'm Adam Ely. We're going to talk about BYOD security. My colors aren't quite showing up here. This is not what the presentation looks like on my laptop. It's much better on my laptop. I just want you to know that. You can't see it, but you can trust me on this one. So, quick information about me. So, I'm currently the co-founder and COO of Blue Box Security. Complete full disclosure, Blue Box Security is a mobile security company. We embrace BYOD. We think it's the most awesome thing, and we hope to charge you all for it one day. So I'm a little bit biased. Actually, I'm really biased in this topic, but I'm going to try to keep it very unbiased. This is not a sales presentation. We actually are not taking new customers right now into our beta program before our general launch. So I have nothing to sell you. And so really what I'm going to do is I'm going to speak about my experiences when I was a CISO at Salesforce, at TiVo, and when I held similar positions at Disney and a couple other companies. Quick shameless plug here at the bottom because, well, I need to hire lots of people. So if you know any security researchers, DevOps, QA, marketing, I need lots of people. I'm hiring lots of people right now. So if you know anybody or if you need a job, please email me because we need, like I said, lots of people. So rockstars@bluebox.com. All of you, write that down. All of you. I want you guys. I need to hire people. Okay. So, first of all, how many of you right now have a BYOD policy in place? Okay, a couple. How many of you have BYOD in your environment? Okay, a couple more. Okay. How many of you full on embrace BYOD, bring whatever devices you want, and you love it? Okay, one. Okay, I was about to say nobody, and that's usually it's nobody. So we got one. We're progressing in the industry, which is quite nice. All right. So this is something I threw in here because I read this in Gartner one day, and it basically is saying that BYOD is the biggest shift in the enterprise since the invasions of PCs. Now, when I read this, I said bullshit the first time. I mean, I literally just looked down and said bullshit, like whatever. I hear this every year about some new random technology, new random trend, whatever. I completely threw this out the window. Then I started thinking about it a little bit more, and I said, well, you know, I will agree that mobile is one of the biggest things to hit enterprise and hit the workspace since PC invasion, right? If I look back at how I used to work, and I'm an old school mobile user, right? My first mobile device, if I discount, and I don't think of the compact iPack and those kind of things, because those were crap and useless big bricks that I hated. I was a BlackBerry user before the BlackBerry had a phone in it, right? So anybody else, did you have one of those?
I worked for BlackBerry.
You worked for BlackBerry. Okay. Shit. I got some shit to say in a minute.
No, cool.
Shit. Okay. No, so I was using the BlackBerry before it actually had a phone, right? I remember I got my very first one because my grandmother's neighbor was a tester for BlackBerry. And this was years and years ago, and I was like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I was able to get on the program, and I'm playing with it. I'm a kid, and I'm like playing with it as a teenager. I'm like, this is awesome. I don't know who I'm going to talk to in email, but this is awesome, right? And then I stayed with it. It wasn't until many years later that I refused to get off the BlackBerry and onto the iPhone, and we'll talk about that in a minute, why. But that mobile trend and putting me on a mobile device shifted my entire life. It shifted how I work, where I work, everything. Now, if you take that and you go to the next level with BYOD, it is possible that BYOD is another really big shift because we're moving away from the standard enterprise devices. We're moving away from controlled devices. We're starting to merge our life even closer than what we did when we had that BlackBerry that was only work. So I don't know if this is exactly true yet. Gartner does, so who am I to argue with Gartner, really? But I think they're onto something with 350 million employee-owned devices and 83% of workplaces starting to embrace this. So I can't argue with Gartner. They're very smart people. So if we start to look at this and we say, okay, how is this a big shift? Why is this a big shift? Why is BYOD important? Why is this trend even happening, right? We need to know that before we can figure out the risk and talk about the security. We have to understand the total drivers. So the very first thing I hear from people when I talk to them and say, why do your employees want to use their own devices? Why don't they want to use BlackBerry? Sorry. Why don't they want to use anything that's like old and like the Trio, Palm stuff, And the very first thing I always hear, enterprise software sucks. It doesn't matter. I always hear this. And I start to think about that and I go, well, how is that a BYOD thing versus just a mobile thing? And we'll talk about that a little bit in a second. But that's always the very first thing I hear. And so then I start thinking about it and I go, okay, well, what are people doing? Why do they want to use their device? And they say, well, I want to use my own device because it makes my workflow easy. It allows me to do what I need to do. I have easy access, easy integration, applications are easy. It's just easy. Huh, that's interesting. Why did I switch from a BlackBerry to an iPhone? Back in 2007, I switched from a BlackBerry to an iPhone, and I'd been using a BlackBerry for years. I mean, I was like, what is this stupid thing? It doesn't have a keyboard on it. I can't touch it. There's no scroll on the side. There's no little ball in the middle. I'm like, I don't know how to use an iPhone. Why do I want this? Yeah, about 6 months later, I decided it was the easiest thing I had used to check my email, calendar, contacts, all of this stuff. It just became easy, so I embraced it. That was the introduction of me fighting my own policy, saying, no, I want this device. It is very, very easy. I was running security, and I was like, crap. I'm like, death to my BlackBerry today. I want my iPhone, right? So it just made it very easy, and it made it easy to be productive, and that was the biggest thing. I have to be productive. I don't want to have to deal with slow software, no access. I want to be productive. I want to have a device in my pocket I can pull out, do whatever I need to do, that's very fast and easy. And that's what turned me, and that's what turns a lot of people. And so that's what's causing this big shift, this big trend into BYOD, because whether it is that the consumer apps or the consumer grade phones or devices or whatever, whether that's what makes it better for people, or it's just a perception that enterprise supplied devices or company owned devices can't meet that, it doesn't matter. It's people have the device in their pocket, they have access to it. Enterprise can't keep up with the purchasing and deployment of these products, so we see the BYOD come into place. Now, as enterprises though, we're kind of scared of BYOD. This is very puzzling to me. As I kind of talk to people and I talk to them about the challenges and the risk of BYOD, they tell me that corporate-owned devices are more secure. That's okay. I accept that for a moment. And then we start talking about what kind of devices. And so here you have a graph, and it shows that people think that tablets are less secure, have higher risk than phones. Okay, I can dig that. I can probably agree with that, right? But there's almost just over double the risk in employee-owned devices versus corporate-owned devices. Now that starts to puzzle me a little bit, because in most cases it's the same device. A company can deploy an iPhone, a person can deploy an iPhone, right? Same device, it's same data they're accessing, same access method, but for some reason there's this perception that it's twice as risky, twice as insecure. Why is that? So does anybody here have an opinion on this? Go ahead.
Because the employer can't control what other apps have been pre-installed locally by the user on an employee-owned device.
Okay, lack of control of that. Sure.
Most risk assessments are based on fantasy rather than fact.
You want to elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, people are very poor estimators of probability and risk, and most of what I've seen, and I do risk analysis as a specialty, is I think it's about twice. So is medium risk 2 times higher than low risk?
There you go.
I could talk all day.
Very nice. No, you made a great point that it's going to come up here in a moment. Okay, yeah.
I think it's for them to gain productivity of the device, they have to extend access to data, but then they don't control the thing that the data lives on. It becomes very hard to retrieve it if the employee is fired, or maintain all the otherwise controls in place on my data.
Mm-hmm.
Once it extends onto that device, I don't know.
Okay.
If I could just do a follow-up real quick.
Sure.
Your question wasn't why do they think it's riskier, it was why do they think it's twice as risky, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
That's what I was going to respond.
This goes back to pre-mobility when all the computers were desk side, inside the firewall, protected from viruses outside.
Yep.
Or an email.
Exactly. So as we talk about this, when I go and I sit down with people and I talk to my peers, as a former CISO, and in the industry or some of our customers, I say, hey, what are the risks of BYOD? First thing that comes out is mobile malware. Right? So first thing they always say, oh, BYOD, I'm scared of it because of mobile malware. So this is McAfee, and there's a McAfee representative in the room. I won't call him out. But this is McAfee's latest threat report, and this is their the mobile section there that shows how many how many pieces of mobile malware they're tracking quarter over quarter. And you can see huge spike in Q1 this year, a drop in Q2, but still substantial year over year, right? Now, I think 80% of this is Android targeted. And then we go over and we look at Lookout. Now, I put this one in here just because I thought this was an interesting fact and something I wanted to point out when I was reading about it the other day. If you look at Lookouts, I hate their name for that reason, but Lookout's report here, 62% of the malware that they're tracking in Q2 of this year was toll fraud malware. And toll fraud malware is where the malware forces the person to call or SMS a number that's a toll number and thus charges them, right? So like a 900 number type concept. I love the fact that this is coming to the mobile space simply because this is one of the oldest attacks and e-crime strategies that I can remember from the dial-up days. Everybody had a modem, everybody dialed up, so you'd get malware that would infect you and it would dial out to Russia to like basically a 900 number and you'd end up with a $9,000 phone bill. It's awesome. They basically just took something from the early 90s, ported it over mobile, and said, hey, there we go. Same infrastructure. I just thought this was ingenious. The old becomes the new again, and all of a sudden we're worried about it. I'm like, it's the same threat. We know what the problem is. And then so after we talk about the malware and get through that, people throw these facts out at me. And by the way, all of these things, these last 3 slides, are facts that people have actually presented to me in the last month about why BYOD is insecure or more risky. And this is the exact order that they flow in based on how many times it's said to me or presented to me. So then we always get down to this. So after we talk about the malware and, how feasible it is per platform and all that good stuff, which I know there's a couple Android researchers around here, so you can talk to them about some of this. We find out, 55% of employees send work email and documents from their personal email. Okay, sure. If you have BYOD, then that means I'm probably going to have my personal stuff on there, and there's that mix, right? Everything's kind of touching, and I can send it from whatever. Okay, fair enough, right? And then you have, unsecured access. There's a statement here from the CIO of IBM saying that, all of their users had no concept what Popular Apps really did, how it was accessing data. Like, for instance, there's all that hoopla about mobile applications accessing your contact list, right? The funny thing nobody ever talks about is mobile applications accessing your calendar, right? I don't know about you, my contact list, sure, it's fairly valuable to somebody, I guess, right? But what's in my calendar is even more valuable. That tells you everywhere I'm going to be, all my meeting, dial-in numbers and codes, product roadmaps are attached to it, candidates' resumes. I mean, who knows? Like, if I did an audit of my calendar, I'd probably freak myself out and never want to use my calendar again, right? And nobody talks about that threat. The same access it gives, the same way that applications can access your contact list, they can access your calendar. But nobody seems to talk about that. It's very funny to me. Anyway, and then we get stats about average user has 41 apps installed. I have vetted this number multiple times, and it holds up. I have like 13 apps installed on my phone, so I am obviously not a power user of apps in the App Store, so I am like the minority in this world. So which means I think I'm safer because I have less apps, because they are always saying the more apps, the more insecure. So then it always boils down to basically this slide right here. This is kind of an overview of what I hear from everybody about the risk of BYOD. Lost devices, employee termination, what else what did we have here? Oh, lack of enterprise control. We heard that multiple times in this room, lack of enterprise control. That's the number one reason I'm given about why BYOD is bad. Enterprise can't control it. Let's be really honest, right? I've run security for very large companies. I was a CISO at Salesforce. I was a CISO at TiVo. I ran security for 3 divisions of Walt Disney. We don't control shit, okay? We try to control things. We try to massage things. We are basically risk shepherds, right? We kind of shepherd things in the right direction. But at the end of the day, the users, they're the ones who are deciding whether they're going to take our security policy or not. They're the ones who are deciding if they're going to go around it or not. So lack of control and BYOD is nothing new, right? When I was handed a BlackBerry, I can pull the data off of it, right? Now, granted, there's great policies in Bez. It's one of the most complete and robust platforms I've ever seen in mobile or just device management at all. but nobody really, implements all those policies. So I could forward emails, I could copy it, I could screenshot it, I could copy and paste. Oh, you turn all that off, great. I pull out another phone, I take a picture of it. I mean, there was all kinds of ways to get the data out. So we don't control, we mitigate, right? And we direct risk. Then we get into discussions about jailbroken devices, malicious apps, malware, or loose privileges, device patching, all these things. But the funny thing that I always come back to is, these are not BYOD problems. These are just mobile problems. And really not mobile problems. They're data problems. Because almost every problem that you see up here, we had with when we rolled out laptops, we had when we rolled out VPN technologies, we had when we rolled out cloud-based technologies, SaaS, PaaS, any of it, right? These are the same problems that we see in multiple different spaces. So the actual risk and the actual problems to us, those aren't new. It's how we actually manage that, and when in the life cycle we decide to accept it, because it's going to be forced down upon us, right, from the users. So these things are not new. These are not special to BYOD, and really not even necessarily special to mobile, but the way that we tackle those problems, that is special to mobile, right? It's the implementation, devil in the details kind of thing there, right? So, but first of all, we have to get over our fear of losing control, right? So I got my buddy Guido here. He's the bouncer at the local nightclub up the block, and when I try to go to the club, normally he's like this. I really want Guido to be like that. I want him to let me in. But he never wants to let me in. He makes me wait in line for an hour, and then he tells me the club is full, and then I get pissed off, and I go to the other club, but they're full too, and then I go home, and I'm frustrated and pissed because I'll never want to go back to the club because it's stupid, right? But this is how security is many times. We're blockers. We don't enable, right? And so users are coming to us and saying, I want to use my iWhatever device, right? We got the new iPhone 5 is shipping, right? I ordered mine last night. Little trick, if you ever want to order it, the website is always screwed. Download the Apple Store app to your phone, order it through there. That thing always works, and you can order about an hour before everybody else. It's a great little backdoor. I've used it like 3 times in a row now to get my iPhones before everybody else. So anyway, great little trick. Anyway, so as soon as those ship, you're going to have a bunch of new iOS 5 devices with iOS 6 operating system on there, or excuse me, 6, on there, and people are going to want to use it, and it's going to continue to happen with more Android devices and all that. So we have to open these doors. But to open these doors, we want to know that we can trust it. So I go out, and I talk to a bunch of Fortune 500 CISOs, and I said, guys, what do you need? What will allow you to trust BYOD and really push this forward in your environment? And this is the basic list that always comes back, right? They want insight. They want to know what data is going to and from the phone. They want to know where it's stored. They want to know who's accessing what. They want to have control. They want to gain control of applications, of data, of device configurations. But the biggest thing I always hear is user acceptance. They want the users to buy in, not go around the policies, not go around the controls. They want users to accept what they're doing, especially in BYOD. This is where the big trick comes in with BYOD. You don't own the device anymore, right? It's not an enterprise device. So the user has some right to go, no, I don't know if I want you to put that software on my device. I don't know if I want you to put that configuration. But you as the enterprise have the right to say, well, if you want to access my data, my network, then I need a little something as well, right? So it's a nice little trade-off, but user acceptance is this very big thing. And so we have to find ways to get the user to accept the controls, to accept our policies, and work with us. The biggest thing I get from users is they're concerned about privacy. That's the number one thing I get from users. Now, I discredited this at first. I was always of the stance of like, I'm big corporate, screw you, don't care if you want access to my email, you'll do what I need. This is actually a pretty big deal. The more and more that I look at it, the more and more I think about it, and the more my research team makes me look at it and think about it, because they're liberal hippies. They make me look at this very closely, and I realize that, if it's my device, I'm going to do a lot of things that I wouldn't do on my work PC, my work laptop, right? Or even my work BlackBerry, my work iPhone. It's my device. I want my life with me at all times, and I can do it. So if I'm accessing my bank account or my health records, I don't want the corporate security guys or network guys to see that. Now, maybe they're doing something malicious with it, maybe they're not. Maybe I should trust them, maybe I shouldn't. But it's my feelings, and feelings are important. At least that's what the girl I'm dating tells me, is that they're important. So they want privacy over everything else. Now the funny thing is, I was talking to a CISO at a financial company the other day, And I said, hey, what's the biggest pushback you're getting? And he goes, well, they keep talking about privacy and they don't want us on their device and all this. And I go, well, how'd you get around it? I was like, you just rolled out a bunch. He goes, yeah, we offered to pay for their data plan. And I go, okay, hold on, let me get this right. I'm like, for $49 a month, they threw all privacy out the window. He goes, yep. I was like, so privacy costs $49 a month. Easy, right? So there are ways around this privacy concern. Now, whether that was short-sighted by some people or a genius move by this bank, I don't know. But that's the price of privacy, $49 a month. Take it or leave it. All right, the next thing is near zero impact to productivity, right? The next concern users always have is, oh, you're putting something on my device. Is it going to slow me down? Is it going to block my Angry Birds, or whatever other random app they have on there? They want to make sure that they're productive and that how they work and what they do is easy and they can continue to do it, right? And so ensuring that you have that privacy and then followed by the near zero impact. And I say near zero because, let's face it, there's always some impact, and I hate getting that argument about is it measurable or not measurable. I don't want to deal with that argument. So I'm going to say near zero. So get as close to zero as possible. And then lastly, single user experience, right? Users want an easy experience. Why does the iPhone dominate the market? Because it's easy, right? People love the interface. People love the experience. You add, a client on there that's kludgy or that breaks that experience or changes that experience. And not to say anything bad about them, but Good Technologies. Good Technologies has a client that you put on there. It's a container. It does what it does, but a lot of users don't like it because it's a separate calendar, a separate email app, all this. It's over here. It screws up that wonderful user experience that they love, and the whole reason they spend all that money on that Apple, device, right? So these are the three things that users come back with, and we have to make sure that we counter wherever we possibly can, because users are what drives IT change, and IT change is what drives security, right? And so as IT is changing and trying to support BYOD and our users, this is kind of what they look at, right? They go out and they say, okay, well, we want to support this, we want to play, but how do we do that? So they go look at solutions like Watchdocs for read-only documents and DRM and Citrix, VDI solutions and that sort of thing, and they go to the users and say, hey, we've enabled BYOD. Pat us on the back, we're happy now. But the users always come back and go, no, you didn't listen to me. I want the same productivity, meaning I don't want Citrix. I want YouSendIt. I want Box. I want SugarSync. I want these consumer-grade apps because we already discussed consumer software kicks the shit out of enterprise software every time. It's more usable. It's more fun. It's social. I can share things and post things and whatever. I get all confused with all that, but people apparently like that because it's the hot trend, right? But so unfortunately, a lot of times, even when we're trying to support them, we're not supporting them in the way that they need to be supported. We're still impacting that productivity. We're still slowing them down. Because at the end of the day, IT needs to support the employee needs. And if we're not, they're going to go around us. I have a friend of mine, another friend of mine's a CISO at a large credit company. And I was talking to him recently about this. And this is the whole reason YouSendIt is actually on this list right here. He said, yeah, we have this secure file sharing application, and we secure mobile devices, and we do all these policies, and we have MDM, and all these great things. He's a very competent CISO, has an amazing team, right? I trust them. They do good stuff. And he said, yeah, but I heard this rumor that people were using YouSendIt. He's like, so I called YouSendIt, and I said, hey, how many accounts do you have that are active currently with email addresses at my company domain? They wrote back, over 400. Over 400 active in the last 2 weeks. Like 2 weeks. So this secure file sharing system and all this MDM and all this, users were like, meh, and they went to YouSendIt because it was easier. It helped their workflow. So users will go around it, and so we have to work with them on that. And we have to come up with easy, standard, straightforward strategies that are device agnostic, right? You're going to have iPhones. You're going to have Androids. You're going to have Blackberries. They still have a big market share. I'm not going to discount Blackberry over here and RIM. You might even have Windows Mobile. I don't know yet. I talk to people. That's a good question. How many of you are starting to see Windows Mobile phones come back into your environment? You? I discount you. You, okay, not you. I discount him. How many of you think that Windows Mobile phones are going to make like a big ramp into your environment? You, I still discount you. You, okay. Okay, there's more people are agreeing with you, so we will agree with you. Yeah, I'm with you, man, on this one, right? I talk to a lot of people, and people are like, yeah, right, I don't care about Windows Mobile. I don't care. And I got other people who are like, yeah, it's going to be 90% of our environment. I'm like, wow, I mean, like Microsoft's selling to some people, like, and not others. I'm very confused by this market. But anyway, we're going to see it, right? So because we're going to see that, and as we start to walk through the controls and we get to kind of where this landscape is and what you can do in mobile, we have to keep in mind that the security controls, especially in BYOD, need to be transparent to the user. It's the user's device; they own it, right? So if I'm a user, and you put some kludgy security software on my device and I don't know what it does and it slows it down or it crashes, I'm going to be pissed. It's my device. I paid $500 for a brand new iPhone. I'm pissed when it crashes, right? So it has to be transparent and continue that empowerment of my productivity, right? To make sure that I can do everything I need to do with all that cool, nifty consumer software that's making its way into the enterprise, like Box. It was consumer, now it's enterprise, right? So we're going to see all of that. And we have to make sure that we're focusing on those real risks and giving the user something so that they feel like we're not just trying to control their personal life. So give them privacy, productivity, whatever it might be. So with that, starts to bring us to the mobile security landscape. Now, like I said, full disclosure, I'm a vendor. I have a new startup. We're hot, by the way. You should check us out. I was playing. We're not selling anything yet. We have private beta customers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically walk through kind of where the mobile security landscape is right now. Okay, Quentin is going to keep me honest, right? He's going to make sure that I don't stray and start marketing my own stuff about how my stuff's so much cooler than all this. No, I'm just playing. I'm not playing. But I'm going to walk you through this so I can give you an honest, non-biased kind of view of where the landscape is, right? Some of these solutions work for companies, some of them aren't right for you. So the first thing, we're all familiar with MDM. How many of you have an MDM product rolled out right now? Mobile Irons, Enterprise Good, Bez, whatever, okay? About half of the room or so, okay? So MDM is kind of where I think, mobile security started. I equate it back more to IT asset management and device management, not really security, though some have security features. I will give RIM credit. They have amazing security features. Nobody turns them on. Amazing security features. Okay. Actually, if you ever get a chance and you're interested, do go read the deployment guide for Bez. Some of the security controls they have in there are way ahead of their time, and it's just amazing. And I'm guessing like government agencies are who pushed a lot of these, because I look at them like, coolest thing ever. Could never enable it, but cool. I want that, right? Anyway, I give RIM so much credit for innovating in that space early on. But outside of that, to support other types of devices, we have the other MDM players, and they have some big pros. And I basically just kind of highlight a couple of the random things people often talk about. There's much more value than just these things here, but you can onboard your devices, you can know where they're at, you can push policies down to secure them, so you're auto locking your PIN codes and all that kind of good stuff. You can wipe the device. That's always fun. I love to screw with coworkers. But then they have some of their cons too. They're not granular. They do what the device supports. So if Apple has an API they expose, they use that. If it doesn't, they don't do it, right? So it's basically what's just right there, and that's it. And they don't really go any lower. So if you have a lot of devices and you need to manage them from an IT perspective, MDM has huge value for that, right? It greatly lowers the cost of management and ownership of those devices. But again, if you're looking back to the security side, it provides a certain set of features. Then you go into the containerization type companies. These are like your goods and kind of companies like that, where they basically say, look, don't worry about the device. The device is irrelevant, which I agree with to some extent. Throw our app down there, and it's a self-contained ecosystem that has your email, your calendar, your file share, your internet access, whatever, right? In theory, this is the best approach. Theories rarely ever work that great in reality. Users push back on this. Number one problem with this approach. Users constantly push back with it. I know about a dozen companies right now switching off of container models to something else, and they're picking what works for them simply because users hate it. They're like, oh, I have this isolated email, but I have this nifty e-sign application over here, but my e-sign application can't access my email can't send it over there. Okay, I got to go find Kinko's. I don't even know where Kinko's exist. I don't even know if they're still in business. I don't know if you can have things printed out, because I don't think I've used a printer in like 3 years at this point, right? I refuse to do it. So this is still a big problem. It disrupts the workflow. It's an app to install. Features are limited because it's a small ecosystem, but it works for some people. Then you have something that's kind of new. You have the MAM space, right? And so these are the mobile application management companies, right? So this is a little bit newer, hasn't totally been proved out in the market, but it's good stuff overall. It depends on the actual company and the implementation. But the concept of this is that you can wrap applications on a device. So you can say, okay, Bob, you want to use your personal iPhone? Great. We have a corporate account with Box. Download Box from our enterprise app store. We'll wrap our controls around it. Now they have some kind of policy control, based on implementation and feature set that controls Box, controls that data flow, controls that access. When you leave the company, they just pull that application off, and in theory, that data or the access to that data is now gone. In theory. Like I said, this is a fairly new space. There was two independent companies that I was watching very closely for about 8 months, and both got snapped up, both got acquired before even launching. So there's a couple of larger companies now trying to push this concept in the market. It's still fairly new, but it's a good concept, good technology. We'll just see how it holds up. And then lastly, we have the application wrapping, application reputation. This is your lookouts. I think McAfee has something in this space as well, if I'm not mistaken. I think Symantec has something in this space. Duo Security is talking a lot about vulnerabilities on applications and things now. So starting to see some of their research come into this space as well. This is AV. Anti-malware, app reputation, same kind of concepts that you see in the desktop space, but for mobile, right? I can't deny Lookout's making a crap load of money. I've been to their office, amazing office. They're doing something right. It's very interesting because they're going OEM right now, so it'll be very interesting to see how this goes. Typically, this is paired with application whitelisting, right? So if you go backwards and you say, well, what's most important to me is managing rolling devices and getting the core policies and everything, well, MDM is your biggest value. If you say, well, in BYOD, I don't want to manage the device because I don't want to feel like I'm, burdening my user or I'm invading their personal space, then container or possibly app wrapping, these things can come into play. App reputation is kind of that, let's try to make sure there's no malware or bad stuff, but I'm going to be hands-off with management, configuration, and access. So these are the 4 main spaces that you have right now for on-device type protections or access corporate data. Now, you also have companies that are pitching their solutions like Watchdogs for read-only access, the VDI solutions, all these kind of things. Different plays, same story from a different day, right? So, we talk about the on-device controls, but we can't forget about the off-device controls. We still have to control access to our enterprise, access to our data, encrypt our data. We still have to do the same core things, right? Manage the risk and the control of our data, because that's what's really important. The same way that we look at cloud security. When we first started looking at SaaS services, right? We said, oh my God, I'm worried about SQL injection. I'm worried about cross-site scripting. I'm one of the first people to tell you that in cloud, I'm not worried about cross-site scripting. I'm not worried about SQL injection. Somebody, questioned me on that the other day. Said, "Do you really understand SQL injection?" You can't. The guy who discovered SQL injection runs my research team. I know SQL injection. I have no misunderstandings about it. I know extremely well. The guy who discovered the entire concept runs my research team. We know this very well. And what I got to in that conversation was, it's not SQL injection I care about. It's my data I really care about. There's many attack vectors, there's many threats to my data. I care about my data. Now, I care about that people are patching and people are fixing these threats, so SQL injection, cross-site scripting, whatever else falls in there in the SaaS world, but what I really care about at the end of the day is my data and the protection. Mobile's the same way. We have all these various threats. We have the malware, we have the lost devices, compromised devices, whatever. But at the end of the day, what we really care about is that data and that access to our corporate environment. So we have to look at that and go backwards and level out and say, what are our threats, what are our risks, right? And we get somebody like this nice gentleman back here who can model the risk for us and come up with the right probabilities, because I will agree most people cannot do probabilities. I'm not gonna lie, I go a little bit by the seat of my pants sometimes too. I'm like, meh, that seems like a high, meh, that's a low, let's go with that today. Completely agree with that assessment. Anyway, so we can't forget about the off-device controls and logging and reporting. We know this. We dismiss this many times in favor of proactive controls, but logging and reporting is a great backstop. It's also a great analysis tool. to figure out where things are screwing up or where you think your risk is going to come, right? So in BYOD, there is a trade-off you're going to make. I'm not saying you have to make this trade-off, but to be realistic, you will make a trade-off in BYOD security because you're not going to want to impact the user too much. You're not going to want to take full control of their personal device where you're restricting everything they can do and you're whitelisting apps on their employee-owned device. You're going to make a trade-off. Employee logging, reporting, and auditing is going to become key to your strategy overall. It's just how it is. And then user empowerment. Make sure we empower the user, give them the good tools to be able to do their job and be productive. Otherwise, like my buddy at the credit agency, they're just going to go around you. They're going to use you send it. And they're going to send all your social security numbers that way. And you're going to be like, well, crap, I just spent a couple $100,000 on mobile security, and they're using you send it, and so you got to kind of figure those things out. But if we pair those controls and we make the right investments at the right time, which is now, this becomes a lot cheaper than if you try to retrofit it later, because as we're seeing a huge growth trend in BYOD means a lot more devices in your environment, which means a lot more devices to retrofit later, a lot more to clean up, a lot more struggle with the users, because once you give users access to something, we all know this, and then you try to take it away, or you try to restrict them, they will revolt and they will hate you, and that's just a nightmare to deal with, right? We've all kind of been there. So to wrap up, talk some questions and see if you guys have anything. If we do this right, we eliminate a lot of problems. We increase that productivity, right? So we get rid of the Kinkos and the old flow of, oh, I just got an email, it's got a contract, I need to go find somewhere to plug in. Okay, I've plugged in, now I need to find a printer. Okay, now I got to print this. Okay, now I got to find Kinko so I can sign it and scan it back in, or I can fax it. I haven't done that in like 3 years. I'm like, if I had to find a Kinko's or a printer anywhere in some city I live in, or city I travel to, that would just screw up my entire day, right? Like, I receive contracts, I e-sign everything, I send it right back, it's collabed with my team, so my back office has it, the customer gets it. Like, I do this walking down the street all day long. This is what I do. Like, I live off my phone, and if I worked for an enterprise and they tried to take that productivity away, I would quit. I'd be like, screw you either owe me more money or I'm going to quit, because you just made my life very, very difficult. But if we do it right, we empower the user to use whatever device, all those fancy apps that they want, but we don't cause any of those kind of problems, and we just continue to move forward in the space. So anyway, that's pretty much it. It's 43 minutes of my speed rambling there. As you can tell, I did not go through this presentation, so I was like, I don't know if I'm going to have enough time to do this. Anyway, so any questions? Any trends that you guys have seen? Any comments? I saw lots of laughing coming from the back over there. So yes, go ahead.
What does MAM stand for?
Mobile Application Management.
Okay, and then what would you say to this Irish airline that charges people if they don't have a printed boarding pass? Did you see that story?
I did not see that, but that is awesome.
360 euros because they had their boarding passes on their phones, but the policy was you have to have it printed.
Oh, it was printed, not e. Oh, I'm sorry, I had that backwards.
They would give you an e-boarding pass, but in order to get on the plane, you either produced a piece of paper or paid a 60 euro fine.
Yeah, that's just silly. That's just weird.
Isn't it? It's just crazy.
Yeah, so I thought you meant the other way around when you first said it. And I was like, oh, they're making people go to electronic. I'm like, that's awesome. I wish everybody did that, because then that would force all of the airports to have the scanners, which is my problem. Why I can't always use the electronic boarding pass, because I end up in some random airport and they're like, we don't know what to do with that. I'm like, crap. Out of security, all the way back, print out, back in security, irritates me. It's. Honestly, my opinion is it's kind of a dick move on their part, but they're pushing innovation, and I like when people push innovation, so it's good. All right, any other questions? Yeah.
So to what extent do you think finding the appropriate BYOD security solution depends on your threat model and the extent to which that tips to malice versus incompetence?
I think a lot. I mean, so the way that I look at everything is based on risk. I mean, I judge everything by risk, and whatever's relevant risk and whatever the relevant threats are is how I end up coming up with my solutions and finding that balance. I think that enterprises need to be very risk aware, and in this case, generally, it's very data aware as well, right? Because that's generally what we're trying to protect data or access. So I think companies need to be very aware of their risk, which I think as an industry we're still kind of immature at doing. apply the appropriate controls, right? So a friend of mine at a bank, they're very concerned because they have people who have internal mobile applications that can actually transfer money between, the bank's actual accounts. So we're talking billions of dollars, right? I'm like, holy crap, somebody got a hold of that. That's crazy, right? But I got another friend that is at a publishing company, and they're like, nah, we have some manuscripts. They're like, yeah, it would suck, but it's not going to be detrimental to the business, right? So there's that fine balance, especially in BYOD, because you're impacting the user on the user's own device. It's not corporate. So I think companies have to be very, very aware of it and balance that out.
I don't know if you guys saw it last night. The last talk upstairs was a lawyer, former federal prosecutor, in charge of a big team of lawyers who do data breach, BYOD, and other things. And he talked for a while about BYOD and company policy and stuff. And one of the most amazing things he said was, in the case of a BYOD situation and a hostile parting of terms between employees and the company, on occasion they will actually execute a civil subpoena to recover the employee's own personal phone.
Yeah.
And that they had actually written that into the employee contract to be able to do that. That just blew me away.
Yeah, that's the other thing I didn't really touch on, and I'm always sensitive about going into this. And I spoke last year. I gave a presentation around mobile security, and I spoke on it a little bit in Europe because the European laws around this are a little bit more clear because of their data privacy laws. It helped kind of define this a little bit better. One of the things that we're doing at Blue Box right now is we're actually producing a set of documents that we're going to give back. We're going to make them open standards back to the community, and we're working with a number of people. Some are governance boards, some are legal, and they range from RFP checklists for buying, mobile security products and understanding what risks are, to corporate policies. And one of the aspects of the corporate policy is actually a legal policy in there. And we're working with a number of legal teams to kind of figure it out. And what I've learned is the law sucks. Just hands down, it sucks. I've seen companies doing what you're talking about. I've seen companies have a policy of fully wiping it and then getting backlash for wiping the employee's device. And that's why the mobile, selective wiping capabilities is a good concept for when you're using mobile application management and MDM to a certain extent. But that is outside of the technical security stuff. That's still one of the biggest, tricky, and really untested areas in US right now. Is what can you really do? Can you fully destroy the device when they leave, even if it's in the employment contract? Is that legal? Are you liable to damages to personal data that's lost that hadn't been backed up? I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not getting into that one and giving advice, but I've seen very heated discussions on both sides of it. I tend to err right down the middle to play it safe, but it's still a very big area and one that you have to watch for. Okay. Any other questions, comments, thoughts? No? Okay, well, thank you very much. So I'll be around if you guys have any questions.